They say you've got to be different on YouTube. Well, you know what? I'm dressed like a fucking idiot with a Viking cap or a helmet, sunglasses. It's 10 o'clock in the night and I've got a stupid looking Game of Thrones sword in my hand. Let's get into this Consecrated Path build guide. Hey everyone, sorry about the cringe start. Thought I'd do something different, including the helmet. I might keep it actually, I don't mind the helmet at all. Now, I was reading through the comments on my previous videos, and okay, granted, that build is just the idea I'm going to run with to do my build for this season, for 3.6. So, and I'm talking about the Windripper build. So it's not going to be a legacy item. I don't think there is a way to get a legacy item unless it's coming out of a I don't even know where you get you just can't in a league unless it drops in unless there's a legacy league stone or something like that. It's not going to happen. Anyway, moving on from that, so that we can build some better content, I'm going to tackle this with more structure going forward so that my content is less ad hoc and a little bit fucking better. I'm still going to say the word fuck in everything. That's not going to change. I've got some new editing software too, so I'm going to actually put images and screenshots on shit too. Anyway, without any of that shit bothering us from now, this is going to be, and I'll add a disclaimer at the start, this is not a starter build. You'll be able to play it in 3.6. I've spent my weekend just getting this up to, I started from scratch and standard just to get this working, but this is a Consecrated Path Templar, in particular the Inquisitor. There's a reason why I've played it why I play the Inquisitor, and it's mainly around the ascendancies. The Inquisitor outside of the Scion is one of the few build paths with ascendancies that actually buff consecrated ground. Not to mention there's a couple of rings that you can use, which I'll show in not too far away. This is the summary part of the video. Anyway, so we get Sanctify, which gives us a buff. It enables us to get more consecrated path or more consecrated ground. Or we stand on consecrated ground, which basically gives us regen and some additional damage as far as I can see, in particular against rare and unique enemies, and a 40% buff against other enemies, which is pretty OP. And then obviously we go to Pious Path, which gives us mana regen, ES regen, which we're not going to use on this build anyway, and it gives us attack speed. And there's a few, I haven't finished this build path yet, but there's a few reasons why I've picked this for this Consecrated Path build, and namely because this really buffs into Consecrated Path really well, but I'll get into that in more detail soon. Anyway, so I'm not going to use this window anymore. I'm actually going to use Path of Building, because I know you guys like numbers and statistics, and by trade I'm actually a finance professional, which is one thing that I'm quite good at. Hopefully, I hope that's the case. So let's have a look at the actual items that we need to make this work. The first is going to be your Doomsower sword. You're going to have this 6 length, and there's a reason for this. So basically, the Doomsower, and I'll go back over to my screen because I have most of these items on here, but there's a few that I don't, which I'm waiting for the league reset to start. So your Doomsower sword is actually really unique, that socketed melee gems get a 15% increased area of effect, which is really good for Consecrated Path because it's melee gem, as it says there. Also, socketed red gems get 10% physical damage as extra fire damage. Now, we're predominantly doing fire damage, so that's actually really fucking OP. So from every red socketed gem that we have in this sword, we are getting a 40% additional fire damage buff, which is really fucking awesome. Alright, aside from that, So we're going to want to start with your Doomsower sword, and I'll try and race through this not quickly but thoroughly. The next thing we want is a Devoto's Devotion. Now this just gives you 20% movement speed, chaos resist, which we definitely need, attack speed, especially with a dual wield it's harder to get attack speed, and gives us a fuck ton of dex, which is dope. It also gives us armor, so as opposed to using, I think it's Stark Onya's, which gives us evasion rating, we actually want to stack armor on this build, which is better for us. Now, coming back to my point, this is not a cheap build. A Doomsower, a 6-link Doomsower, took me ages to get this, but that's not cheap. I think there are 2 to 3x. Kaom's Heart is the next thing you'll need. Now, it's not so much for the damage. Now, you could use a Bronze Lith, which is actually going to buff your damage exponentially even further with movement speed modifiers, because Consecrated Path is actually movement speed attack ability. Kaom's Heart, though, is going to give you that juicy 500 maximum health. Please note, this is not a legacy Kaom's Heart. This is a normal Kaom's Heart. This is this Kaom's Heart here. Now I don't have a very good fire damage roll on mine, but you get the picture. The next thing we're going to use is just any old Greaves. Who cares? Don't need to worry about that. Well, you need to get resistance essentially on your Greaves, so you'll need to stack health and try and get max rolls or T1 rolls on every other resist. So your fire, lightning, and what was the last one? Cold. Almost forgot that. So you want to get that, and you want to get at least 100 health as a roll. Now those to buy are difficult. You might get like 60 plus is good, and also attack speed is really good to have on that as well. The next thing I'm going to suggest is the Kaom's Roots. And the reason why I'm saying Kaom's Roots as your boots is obviously because you get a massive health modifier, but it also gives you unwavering stance, which basically means that you can't be stopped when you start wailing on shit. You just keep going, so you just sit here and wail on enemies like a motherfucker, which makes them quite powerful. And it's the reason why I like them. The next thing that you're going to want to get is, and I'm just using a Carnage Heart in this case. It gives me resistances, 30 to all attributes. It's just quite a good item. It also gives you leech and increased damage while leechings, and sustain is going to be one of the biggest issues with this build. Now at level 72 I can do up to T8 to 10 maps, so that's actually quite good for level 72. It's quite powerful. It is going to get even more powerful as I get better items, and Onyx, the Carnage Heart helps a lot with that. The next thing I'm saying, now I am not running these rings specifically because they're 80 chaos each, and I don't feel like shelling out 80 chaos because I'm a cheap bastard in Standard League, even though I have the currency there. I'm just running some rings with some, resist stats and things like that. It'll take a little bit of balancing to run these two rings, but the reason why I want to run these two rings, these gifts from above diamond rings, is because they not only give you a chance to trigger a level 10 Consecrate when you deal a critical strike, but they also give you, in the vicinity of 60%, almost 60% critical strike chance, increased light radius, which isn't a massive thing. Also, 45% increased rarity of items dropped by enemies when you kill someone with a crit. Now, that's pretty good, and if you're running two of those, it's not bad. It's quite good. That's that's a 90% chance of getting a fucking dope item when you crit. Also, which makes these even better, is they increase when you're on consecrated ground, which our passive, if you remember Sanctify, procs consecrated ground. It increases your damage by 50%. And it gives you 5% additional block chance. So with two of these rings, that's 100% damage modifier, increase in damage, and it gives you 10% block chance. And lastly, your belt, you're going to want to run, something with 100 health and all resist, as in each roll for each individual resist up to 35% around abouts if you can get it there. Higher, the better. That's really up to your determination. I've only got this build to 72. Works quite well for mapping. So far, it's not amazing for bosses, but I'm pretty sure once I bring in my gifts from above when the league rolls over, then it'll be quite good. So yeah, that's where I'm at for items. So let's look at gem links. Now, if you guys can't see everything in here, I'll type these up in the thingamabob. But let's see if I can. No, I can't zoom it. Damn. Anyway, so let's look at gem links. So obviously, Consecrated Path. We're going to run Consecrated Path in our sword. So in our Doomsawer, we're going to run that. Consecrated Path, faster attacks, added fire damage, elemental damage with attacks, elemental focus, and melee physical damage. Now there's a reason why we need to run elemental focus. So if you don't know what that does, it basically it will stop you from proccing an elemental ailment on enemies. It'll increase your elemental damage, but stop you from actually igniting enemies. And the reason why we need to do that comes back to actually our ascendancy here. So when we look at Righteous Providence, it's 100% increased critical strike chance against enemies that are affected by no elemental ailments. And that's why we need to run that gem. Because if we run that gem and we crit, we'll get a 45% crit multi. But we won't get that 100% increased critical strike chance. And that's what we want. So by doing that, it buffs our crit chance by 100%. And that's quite meaty. And one of the best reasons why we run the Inquisitor when we play this sort of build is for those sweet, juicy crits. So obviously the other skills that we're running is I'm running Herald of Purity, Poacher's Mark, and I'm just running, obviously you got to run Blasphemy and Enlighten with Poacher's Mark. Consecrate is built in from our ring, which is pretty cool. Immortal Call, your standard cast when damage taken, setup. So you're going to want cast with damage taken, Immortal Call, increased duration, and Blood Rage for Frenzy Charge generation. Now, also to add, I've mucked around with this before. You only want to level the Immortal Call and Blood Rage to 5, and you want to have cast when damage taken at level 1. The reason why is you want cast with Jesus fucking Christ, I can't speak English. You want cast when damage taken to proc constantly, and that's going to in particular when you are taking damage. So that means that your Immortal Call goes off, so you get the invulnerability buff, and also your Blood Rage procs. So you're constantly generating charges, frenzy charges, and also you're basically not, I don't want to say unkillable, but you're less killable. The last passive I'm running is Dreadbanner, and that's just because it gives you adrenaline, and adrenaline is sick. But also it just makes the enemy take more physical damage. And obviously we're scaling additional fire damage off physical damage. Now, with the new 3.6 patch that's coming out, they're introducing Zealot's Oath, I think it's called, which is basically like a holy damage passive. I'm yet to see the full details of what that will actually do, or have the time to sit down and watch every single video out there, but I actually reckon that would benefit this build significantly, and I'd probably get rid of Herald of Purity and Dreadbanner to substitute it, even if it took 50%, because it's probably going to buff this build through the shithouse. Anyway, so let's look at the path of building for this build guide. Where the fuck is it? That's right, that massive fuck off tree. Alright, path of building. So, our path of building, starting from the Templar area, and this is scaled to 116 points, so this is level 95. And if anyone is wondering what I'm using, this is literally a program called Path of Building. It's awesome. It can basically set out your builds and you can punch in all the details you need. I can do a tutorial about how to do this, but it's good for predicting your DPS and things like that. Now, the DPS that it calculates here may not always be accurate, but it's, you know, it's a good estimator. Like, it's not going to accurately calculate how our passives from our ascendancies and our rings are going to proc our damage. And you'll see in the gameplay footage I put down shortly that it's you know, it's a pretty good build. At least I'll definitely be playing, once I play my league starter, I'll be playing this as my secondary build, because it's very quick at mapping. Like, it's fucking balls to the walls quick. For a melee build, it's very quick, and you just hold down, right click, and just let it go to town. And that's the best part about it. It's just fucking awesome. Alright, so now with our tree. So we want to build through these initial mana and health regen nodes. And then we want to move into Sanctity, and we'll want to go up from Sanctity, pick up Discipline and Training, and pick up these Explosive Impact and these Purity of Flesh nodes up here. This is just to buff our health. It also means we get Amplify, which gives us better AoE damage, and this build is all about effective AoE damage. And we get Retribution, which gives us some attack speed. Next from there, we're going to want to go down and pick up our health nodes pretty early and get into Berserking down here, which is good. And then obviously we're going to then, you can fill these jewel sockets with, basically the jewels you want for these will be things with resistances and health. So maximum health, like 7% health rolls with additional resistances, etc., etc. Survivability is a little bit of an issue with this build, but gem sockets definitely help with that. The next pathing you want to go down is you want to go all the way down and pick up Heart of the Warrior to continue to increase health. So we want to get nice and chunky. Come up, pick up By the Blade, and then you want to ignore these nodes here. Don't worry about this stuff. You probably will need to pick up this 30 dex node, because you will be running low on dex until you get to like level 60, 67 when you can use your Devotos. I think there's Lionized boots that give you a good buff to that sort of stuff. So you're going to want to go across and you want to pick up these Disembowelment Critical Strike nodes. Ignore these health nodes for now. We want to come down and pick up the Razor's Edge and the Blade Master minor node clusters here. And the reason why is this gives us a nice, you know, addition to our DPS. And then obviously from there, pick up Juggernaut just to make us a bit meatier. Now these resistance nodes here are going to be contingent on whether or not you've got enough resistance at the time, but you're probably going to need to pick up these nodes. Now I know a lot of builds don't use this, but I think in this instance, you know, we're going to buff the shit out of Consecrated Path, so let's, you know, give him a bit of help on the tree. Then we want to pick up Lust for Carnage. We want to come down and pick up Bloodless, and the health nodes associated around there, and then come back up, pick up Barbarism, pick up this other little jewel socket here. If you've got time, pick up Indomitable, which gives you 20% reduced damage from critical strikes, which is surprisingly good. And then after that, you want to pick up Tireless to give us reduction to our mana usage. What's that? 9 plus 15% less. I did that math in my head. And then we want to come up and pick up Devotion, and pick up Holy Dominion and Divine Fervor, and then pick up our Celestial Judgment and another jewel node here. And that will pretty much do your tree. Now I'll put a paste bin for this path of building in the description, and you can use that. And if you need help with using paste bin, obviously just Google it or send me a message even. I will answer those sorts of questions because they're all good questions, and you know, it takes a long fucking time to learn this game, and there's shit like this that you just don't know. So that's and you know, I did this in one weekend. Now, given I was playing in standard, but you know, it's possible to do it. So from there, our ascendancy nodes, where the fuck are they? Alright, so our ascendancies, we're going to want to pick up the Sanctify node first, then we want to pick up Pious Path, then we want to pick up Righteous Providence, and then finally Instruments of Virtue. And the reason we want Instruments of Virtue, that's going to give us an increase of 20% attack speed if we've attacked recently, and that's pretty dope in this situation. Attack speed directly impacts the movement speed of this ability, so the more attack speed that you have, the faster you move from path to path when you're actually mapping. So, you know, when you like bounces all over the screen, that's what this will do. Essentially, it will look like Flicker Strike, and you'll see in the gameplay footage, it's actually, it's awesome. It's like watching Goku and Vegeta hit it out in season, was it 2 of Dragon Ball Z, or not 2, but the Australian season 2. Anyway, so that's pretty much all there is to this build. Now, the pros and cons of this build. It's got a lot of health. It does good damage. I haven't tested this on Shaper yet. Now, I know there's not a lot of Consecrated Path builds out there, but I actually think that this will get to a point where it's Shaper viable, and I'm going to play this in the Standard League until the season ticks over. And you know, if I get it there, then you know what, I'm probably going to play it in the main league as well, because I actually just really enjoy this playstyle. It's just fun. Like, honestly, it's just fucking fun. Those are the pros. The cons is, you know, it lacks a bit in the elemental resist area. That's going to take a little bit of balancing, and just, you know, obviously investment in currency. The other thing is it's expensive, so don't do it as a league starter. And I know I got slayed on my last video for, you know, a Magic Find Wind Ripper build. That's more viable as a league starter than this build. So, you know, don't do it as a league starter, but do it as a second build in 3.6. If you want to try a melee build in particular too, because there's not a lot to it. Yeah, those are pretty much the main disadvantages of this build. Apart from that, it's just a lot of fun. And you know what? We play video games to have fun. So anyway, this has went on for 20 minutes, and this is so much longer than I was planning on. But yeah, if I'll play some B-roll now and do some dope-ass editing, hopefully. And if you want to see more content structured like this, and I probably will structure my content more like this, then yeah, like and sub. I will continue to play at this build and get it past 72, and then I'll do maybe an update to this, but this will essentially apply to 3.6, and when 3.6 drops, I'll even scale this for 3.6, so you know, we can actually get this shit rolling. Now, I am aware I haven't got a movement skill in here, but you know what, Consecrated Path is a movement skill, so I'm going to cop shit for that, but whatever. Anyway, if you want to see more of my shit on YouTube, I don't make videos to make profit, I work. So I literally make content because it's fun and I just enjoy sharing with people. Let me know in the comments if you want to see me build something, in particular even on one Saturday. I will level something up for you. I will level a bitch up. And I will try and get it working, so that at least you can get to T10 to T12 maps. And if there's any items that you guys actually want to see that, you know, are stupid ass items, I'm happy to have a play around and see if I can get it working. I did try and make this Titanian build, which, as you can see, or Tripanion build. As you can see, I was set up to do that, but I failed immensely because it's a shit item at late game. It just doesn't scale fizz damage the way that I need it to, so I scrapped that and went with Doomsower, which was more fun and faster. Anyway, like and sub. I don't know where my finger's pointing. It's pointing somewhere. And if you want to see the helmet more, like and sub double if that's even possible. And apart from that, thanks for watching this video.